Welcome to DISflex certification.
Now we're looking at our final sub-factor pairing, where we're looking at the relationship between your C, which is your strategy and your steadiness, and your compliance factor. Now that relationship, when your S is overpowering or governing over your C, has a word which is called persistence. And when you see persistent people, that's actually something that I like. I like people who are persistent. They keep on going, and they just have a certain amount of resilience. So if you need to have persistent behaviors, if you need to go the extra mile, the way you do that is to elevate your S and push your C down, where you say, okay, I got to go the extra mile. I'm supposed to knock off at 5 o'clock, but I can't do that, so I'm going to stay until midnight. So that C goes down, the S goes up, and that's just a silly example, but that's how you remember these sub-factors, is what would you do in that situation? How would you flex that situation, getting rid of the rules to be persistent to get to those goals? What would that look like in terms of the S governing over the C? So when the opposite happens, when the C governs over the S, we're looking at something which is the hardest sub-factor, I think, to understand. It's called sensitivity. Now, it's not sensitivity as in emotions. This is behavior. So you are sensitive to the situation. You are sensitive to the rules. You are sensitive to what should be happening here according to your box of understanding of the rules and the plans that you've made. So it's that kind of sensitivity. It is nothing to do with emotional sensitivity. You are sensitive to the situation of what should be happening according to the rules. Okay, so that's what happens when your C is governing over your thoughtfulness. You are sensitive to that situation. Okay, so let's look at this. When they're in stases, when you neither have the S or the C in a dominant position, you would be then viewed as, focused and thoughtful simultaneously, where you, okay, got to get this done, and we're going to do this thoughtfully. So one is not overpowering the other. They're both working in tandem to get something done, and that is called focused and thoughtful simultaneously. So that's that balance right over here. Let's read what happens and what that behavior looks like when you tilt above persistency, when you've got too much S dominating over not enough C, and that's called stubborn. That's not pretty. So way high on the S, very little C, you're stubborn. You're not looking at what should happen for this situation or the rules or anything. You just want it your way, and you are stubborn, stubbornly digging your heels in. If you bring the C up, or you bring that S down a little bit and close the gap just a little bit, it's still looked at as pushy. You haven't gone to persistent yet. So stubborn, pushy, not good. Now you've got to the actual sub-factor that you can do by design, which is called persistent. That's not a bad behavior. And then look what happens when you go just below persistency. You're viewed as diligent. You looked at resiliency, which is a great thing. People like people who are resilient in getting to the goals. Now you're looking at being encouraged, because you're hopeful, which is an S type of behavior over a C type of behavior. And then you're looking at determined, where you know that you have to get this thing done, and you are loyal, and you're a trooper, and you're getting it done. And then again, when you're in stasis, we're looking at focused and thoughtful. And then when the C starts coming into play over here, you're looking at being viewed as perceptive, instinctual, where the C is rising and the S is getting dominated by the C. You're looking at being rules-oriented, and that's how you're being viewed. You're looking at being understanding of the rules, not understanding, but understanding of the rules and what is expected of you. And then you're looking at sensitivity to the rules, sensitive to the situation, and then it tilts. Again, there's a fine line between being sensitive and being indecisive, which is just that tiny little bit of over tilt. And then when the C is completely overpowering the S, you can get into a situation where people view you as being in a state of analysis paralysis, and that's not good. So these behaviors are able to be viewed as a word that can be described, and when you hear them, you know what to do. You know how to dial up and dial down which factor. So this is how we use this for coaching. So now that we know what subfactors are, you'll notice in the report that there is a little bit of guidance as far as what do these behaviors look like for that particular person. So if you're looking at the box right here, in your report, you will see that these behaviors are delineated for each of the person according to their subfactors. So if we're looking at somebody who has a D more governing than an I, in other words, they're on the efficiency subfactor, what you're going to find is they're going to be direct and assertive. They're going to finish their work very quickly. They're going to rarely, if ever, miss a deadline. You can take it to the bank. They might be, or appear to be willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. So that is the efficiency subfactor. Now let's go to the other side where the I is dominating over the D, and that's called friendliness again. And we are repeating these so that they get inside your head. So I over D is friendliness. And when people are friendly, they love to communicate. They tend to be extroverts. They're good at making small talk, making people comfortable. They get along well with others. So that's a great behavior. So that's the I over D. Now we're looking at the relationship between the D and the S, and what does that mean for somebody? And again, self-motivation. D over S is self-motivation. And what does that mean? People would generally always be working on something. That's what they are. They're motivated. That's what they are. They don't need somebody poking them. They're on it. They tend not to take extended breaks, and they are creative or imaginative. They tend to be that because they're constantly in motion. On the other side of the spectrum, you're looking at people who are viewed as patient, where the S is dominating over the D. That's called patience. And if they have this subfactor in play, they're going to be they're going to be viewed as being more introverted. They rarely make rash decisions, which is good in a team. They handle stressful situations by waiting the stressful situation out. They kind of go into their little shell and wait it out. And they tend to be realistic and positive with a lot of hope. So that's not a bad thing at all. Now, the next subfactor that we're looking at is where the pairing of D over C. And if you remember, that is called independence. So if D dominates over C, it's called independence. And these type of people actually prefer to work alone, independently. They create their own rules. They'll typically remain neutral in the affairs of others because they want to be independent and not get involved with that. They just don't like it. They tend to be very goal-oriented. And then if you're looking at the C over D behaviors, remember those are called cooperative behaviors, and people like that would be easy to work with. They enjoy helping each other out, helping people out. They focus on policies and procedures, and they naturally build positive relationships with others, which is great. So these are the strengths of these subfactors. Next subfactor we're looking at is the relationship between I and S. And when I overpowers S or dominates over S, we're looking at enthusiasm, being in the spirit of things, being enthusiastic. And these people are outgoing, they're extroverted, they have positive mental attitude, they have a positive attitude in general. They're able to keep up with others because they are enthusiastic. They tend to have a high energy level and get charged up when they're around people. They are viewed as go-getters. You know, they like that as long as they're around people. They tend to be looked at as cheerleaders and go-getters. And then when steadiness is overpowering the I, remember that is called thoughtfulness. So these people are viewed as being highly aware of their surroundings. You know, they're very sensitive to that. They think diligently, they tend to plan for everything, and they trust logic over impulse. It's what they do. The next subfactor strengths that you would see in this report would be when we're looking at the relationship between the I and the C, where the I is governing over the C. These type of people tend to be extroverted as well. They rarely doubt themselves because, again, this is called self-confidence, right? And that I is much higher than the C and is governing over that and taking precedent over it. They're very easily open up conversations. They just social butterflies. They love it. They don't care who they talk to. They don't care if it's the president of the company or the prime minister or anybody else. They don't care. They're just very willing and open to any kind of conversation anywhere. And they can tend to be curious cats. They like people. They're very comfortable in social situations, and they're often viewed as social butterflies. And they always get invited to dinner parties and events, and people like them on teams because they are that type of person who can open up and interact with customers and clients very, very well. Now, on the other side of the coin, when the C is dominating or governing over the I, remember that's called accuracy. And we need that in teams as well and in organizations as well. And people who are viewed as having the sub-factor of accuracy are actually viewed as people who take their time and do things properly and do things well. They pay attention to details. They do tend to easily find errors, which is very useful on a team for people that, like me, that don't find them as easily. I train myself to do it, but it's stressful. And then they prefer to understand the situation completely before they make a decision. So they're viewed as meticulous in that manner. So the next one we're looking at is the relationship. This is the final one, relationship between the S and the C. And if you remember, when the S governs over the C, it's called persistence. These people are viewed as keeping their work. They keep at their work despite the difficulties that they may encounter. They are persistent, and you can take it to the bank. They're going to get this job done because they are persistent. They're also viewed as predictable. We can give it to John because we know he's going to do it. Sally is always going to bring this home. So they're seen as determined as well, predictable and determined, resilient, and they just rarely get discouraged. So when you're around them, you go, okay, we just keep on going, we get it done. We're going to get there. We're going to get there in the end. And they just figure out ways to just doggedly get it done. And that is the persistence sub-factor. On the other side of the coin, when you're looking at the relationship between compliance and the steadiness and the strategy side, when you're looking at compliance dominating over that S, remember, that is called sensitivity. And again, it is sensitivity to the situation. It is not about your emotional sensitivity. So these people are viewed as people who are highly aware of the rules. They're sensitive to what should be happening. They do a lot of contingency planning, and they're really good at it because they're sensitive to things that could go wrong. They're sensitive to details. And remember, this doesn't mean that they're sensitive emotionally and that they get easily upset. That is not the case at all. In fact, they are often viewed as being very calm. So those are the sub-factor behaviors that we're looking at when we're looking at these pairings. That's super exciting. I highly recommend that you study these in detail. This is rich coaching conversations, mentoring conversations. And for me, this helped me flex my behavior, change my behavior, so I'm situationally adapting myself to whatever is required to get the goals done. And I hope that you'll view that in this light and study them and turn yourself into a master of behavioral flexing.